The first decision would be to go to the cloud for sure, but do it with cloud agnostic. So do it with Kubernetes, Terraform, Helm files, etc. Because at some point you will most likely, especially asked to move, and that means that decision can save you a lot of money in the long run. The basic of cybersecurity is not difficult in the sense, or not say cyber, I mean information security, actually covering all the bases from recruitment all the way to managing information, including cybersecurity of actually the technical system, device management, etc. But most of the things that happens are the basics. It is people writing their passwords on yellow stickers on their screen. Space is slow moving in the sense that our time frames are typically measured in decades, especially in the classical space, as we call it, which means the European Space Agency, Humans-Sat, and that kind of organizations. So typically the design have been made many, many years ago.
Welcome back to Bits and Bolts with Paulina, and today we have a special guest, Gert Villemos. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your surname wrong.
That's close enough. Been working internationally for many years. I've heard all possible pronunciations of my name.
Yeah, the same with me. Correct ones, wrong ones. We've been there all. And we talk usually about tech, AI leadership, life in general, and how tech influence it. And you are the CTO, CISO of Leanspace. You are a leader who spent 2 decades building the systems that run European satellites, implementing enterprise architectures at scale, modernizing the space operations, making decisions that has consequences for 10 years later, what is very long-term planning, especially in tech-connected areas where technologies keep changing all the time. And you have long list of achievements from 20 years of designing mission-critical space systems, leading technical restructures of delivered sustained UOU growth, including 10% of telespatial, driving ISO and ITAR compliance, coaching engineering organizations for self-organizations. I know we also talked, some time ago about various projects which you are running, and the list is much longer of all your achievements. That's very impressive. Correct me if I didn't include something or it's...
There is many things not included, but that's fine. There was a highlights, a bit of busy career I did.
Great. A lot to learn from you. We have many teams don't really realize that the tech stacks they choose in year 0 become political, operational, and security constraints moving forward because the landscape is changing, and it's both in IT. It's also in I think we both partially work with hardware at some points in technology, and that's even further. Also, the satellites which go to space, and when you need to deal with it when it's already in there. So you have architectured ground system for ESA missions. We build references, architectures for EU MEET SAT, a very long abbreviation here.
Indeed, in Darmstadt,
the
European
yes.
Meteorological Institutions.
Yeah, exactly. And same with Telespazio and Leanspace. So have you seen that architectural locking actually looks like in the real world? What's your opinions about this? How
Absolutely.
does it look like?
Space is slow moving in the sense that our time frames are typically measured in decades, especially in the classical space, as we call it, which means the European Space Agency, Humans-Sat, and that kind of organizations. So typically the design have been made many, many years ago. The satellites that are today flying for ESA are built based on a system called SCOS 2000, where I was a project manager and technical manager for a number of years. And that system was started in 99 and was designed in 99. So 26 years ago. So the decisions that was made back then and was taken in the architecture also to solve very specific constraints on hardware, processing power, etc., have propagated through the evolutions that happened since. So many of the concepts that we introduced back then to solve very specific problems are actually still to be found today, 26 years later, when these technical constraints no longer exist. One very specific example is we had massive problems back then storing the amount of data that came down quickly enough into the databases that existed at that point in time. And therefore, we at some point invented that we would segment the data into long-term and short-term archives, basically because if the data file became too big, we couldn't search in them anymore. It took too long. So we basically started segmenting the data files. This implementation is still there today, even though modern storage solutions for this kind of data can easily handle that amount of data. And therefore, we actually see that the decisions made back then due to certain constraints propagate through 26 years of evolution of a system to still be applicable today, even though we have much, much more modern technologies. And that's just one example. I have many other examples, refresh rates of displays, et cetera, is all still there in the current system, even though the constraints are not there anymore. But it's hard at that point in time, that early in time, to actually consider how the evolution will be so far into the future. Back in 99, I did not imagine that I would sit here in 2025 talking with you and talking about that kind of system to be designed back then. It was a different world. But in these kind of environments, yes, the things last for a very, very long time.
Yeah, it is impressive that it still works even after 26 years, and it's still applied in in the current requirements, even if they have a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of newer technologies. But do you see, for example, that any decisions which were made early on were hurting the organizations much later?
Yes, I mean, monolithic designs back then were normal. That was how you designed applications. Today, you would do it differently. You would split them into microservices or similar and make sure you can actually scale and use much more modern processing infrastructures. And that's the problem that these kind of classical systems have today. You can't migrate them. So the architectural decision, how you do the data model, how interlinked the data model is. Do you do sequential processing or do you have more event-driven, etc.? All these decisions were made back then and stays in the systems. Back then it was sequential, and that means things trickle through the system in a sequential manner, which today you wouldn't do. But back then, that was how you did it.
No, but I think from, there is also a wave of hype for particular solutions or technologies, because, there was a lot of monolithic. Then we go all the, swing went all the other way to microservices. And now I think we're somewhere in between, that sometimes they go more towards monolithic, more towards microservices, depending on what use cases doing it and what is applicable. So I think it varies.
Indeed, it varies. There are different best solutions, and also it can actually be easier to design a system monolithic first and then split it up later. When you've done it once monolithic, you know how you should have split it into subparts. It can be very, very hard to design a system from day one to really be microservices. That's a tough one.
Exactly, it's also a system, getting more mature from the beginning, where you will start building it in early stages later, when you have suddenly very complex with many sites and many microservices system, which you need to maintain and support much more users in more use cases.
Indeed. And then suddenly have distributed systems. The systems we created back then was not really intended to be distributed. And today, most systems are distributed across multiple locations. So efficient communication protocols, etc., have to be retrospectively built into these systems.
Exactly. But what goes also with building the system and structure, it's compliance, which, people in tech are not the biggest fans of, but especially in EU, more and more, it's harder to escape from it. So, for example, in Leanspace, you went through ISO 27001 and ITAR, and, many CTOs look into it a bit too late versus to take it into already requirements when they start building anything, and that they're gonna need to also look into it. How often do you see companies that, they log themselves and they forget about it, and that it's
All
kind
the
of,
time. And I think in space, we are unfortunately very, very far behind. There's been, especially in Europe for a long time, a very naive attitude towards space being civil and being possibly dual use, it's called, but civil at the core. And that means most companies I meet are not security aware, or even prepared. I just been to Space Tech Expo 2025, where 1,000 companies from around Europe and the world actually, but mainly Europe, came to talk about this. And I talked with many of them about security. And most of them have close to nothing. They are not aware, and they're certainly not ready to tackle supply chain attacks, high availability, resilience, even basic information security is not there. Much less certifications. And at the same time, many of these companies are hoping for having a big boost in their business due to the current geopolitical situation, where a lot of money is being pumped into military and into these kind of high-tech things in Europe. But if they're not ready for security, they're not going to be selected, because all the big ones know that the chain is only as strong as the weakest link, and that means including one supplier that doesn't have these things under control, you are out. And that means I think a lot of these companies are really going to lose a lot of business. As I said, I think we're very, very far behind from the Americans. I went to America 15 years ago at a conference, met 3 young people working space situational awareness. What in Europe thinks about monitoring for solar storms, etc. In America, it means Chinese killer satellites and Russian rockets. But I talked with them. We went out in the evening. They picked me up at the hotel, and in the car, when they picked me up, they said, "Gert, tomorrow we need to submit a written report about everything we talk about, because you're not American. You're a foreigner. You're an alien. And we have to do that because once a year we get a lie detector test where they're testing if we really reported everything." And 15 years ago, as a young, naive European, I was shocked about this. I thought, wow, is that the level they go to in US? They're crazy. They must be paranoid. Today, I think, well, maybe they got this right. Maybe we in Europe need to go to the next level. We are not ready.
Do you think, is there anything what companies can take into, in the beginning when they start a new project or something, to make it much easier for them to get certified when they get into it?
The basic of cybersecurity is not difficult in the sense, or not say cyber. I mean information security. I mean actually covering all the bases from recruitment all the way to managing information, including cybersecurity of actually the technical system, device management, etc. But most of the things that happens are the basics. It is people writing their passwords on yellow stickers on their screen. It is exposing passwords through websites that steals your credentials. It's the basics. First of all, it's the people. It's your staff that make mistakes, and it's the basics. So start with the basics. Get them sorted, and if you get them sorted, then you're actually quite far already. Stop reusing passwords. Don't have the same password for 15 different sites. It's very simple. It's the basics. And down the line, when all this has been done, then we start talking about having post-scriptum, quantum encryption, etc. But that's not where you start. You start with the basics. And I think there's no reason why the companies can't start this now, except that they don't really see the value, how weird that may sound. Because the fear of things that might happen with a cost that might come, but who knows, maybe it doesn't come, it's hard to justify an investment. So I think people need to see this completely differently. They need to see compliance and security and certification as an enabler for their business. They're not going to get those big juicy contracts unless they have this in order. Not because they have a security breach, but because the big ones that have the money will ask for it. So it's a business enabler to do security. I have the luck that my CEO see it exactly like that. We're investing in security for exactly that reason, so that we can be part of the big juicy programs, and that we're ready.
Exactly. You need to be on top of the stuff, and you need to be able to, and I've seen all you saying about, I see it all the time, or from passwords being admin 123, to people having, their birthdays in their passwords and using it in 50 places, or putting everything in the public models in AI. That's a new level of, all of it is still there, and even tech people, underestimate it. Or, there was this recent case with NPM, I think, packages where they had to, suddenly you need to rotate all your passwords. They don't have processes, they don't have support, they don't know how many passwords. How do they rotate them? When you see the passwords not rotated for 10 years, I'm like...
But let's at least make it hard for whoever tries to get into our system to get in. But today, I would say for most companies, it's not even hard. It's the basics that are not in place. But let's at least raise that bar to make it hard. And somebody who really, really, really wants to get in will most likely get in at some point. The big national players are very hard to stop unless you have the finances and your own backing from your own government. But it should be difficult. Need to make it difficult.
Exactly. So I talked to someone recently also, and same was said, that you never are fully secure, but you can make it just harder for someone to get into
Exactly
to your stuff. Make it make it
and
hard
make
enough
sure
so they don't not interested in it.
Exactly. So that will scare away most because it's too cumbersome. Most criminals are businessmen as well. If it's harder to rob from you, they will go to the neighbor because it's easier there. The national players, the one who is not there for the money but there for other reasons, they will insist and still continue. But then you need to have other defense in depth implemented. You need to make sure that you detect when it happens and react to it, and can segment and isolate as quickly as possible. I think we all have to accept that it can happen and it will happen, and then just be ready that when it happens, that the damage is minimal. Because it is impossible. Well, I should never say impossible. Most likely some manage, but for a normal size, a small size company, to close all the holes and all the vulnerabilities, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and it's expensive. Usually they don't have enough budget and resources and hands to being able to handle all of it.
Exactly. It costs. I think many people underestimate the effort as well. The effort in not so much in tools and in defining the things, but actually operating security. Because security is not something you install and then it's just running in the background. It is something that you constantly check, verify, review, monitor, react to on a daily basis. And that is where most of the effort actually goes in. So it's not about buying that one tool that's going to cost you 10, 50, 20K. It is about having a team that constantly checks in the background and makes sure that everything stays safe and is safe. That costs
exactly.
you money.
And it's maintaining of, updating your stuff, getting, searching what's happening.
Exactly.
Being on top of the stuff. And that's expensive, as you were saying.
Yeah. But also what excites me about security, because it is bloody complex. And that's what is interesting. How can you do this in a cost efficient, in a secure, of course, but also in a cost efficient and optimized way, that you do what you need to do, but you don't have an army of people. Because if you're 30 people in a company, you can't have 5 people doing just security. It's not possible. So that is why I find security exciting. A complex problem to solve, and the question, can it be done in a simple way? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, definitely. And, stuff which were best practices right now are getting enforced also by law, at least in EU. I think US was a bit more strict with it versus we just catching up to it. So it's going to be also expensive if they don't do this, at least the basis, because they're going to get fines by not being compliant.
Yeah, indeed.
So your philosophy is that,
even though I'm not a fan of a lot of bureaucracy and many rules and the regulations, but I do think the regulation have a role to play here, because most companies will only do this because it could be seen as a sunk cost. They will only do it if there is regulation that force them to do it, or else they cannot do certain kinds of business. Then they will do it, and therefore I fully agree. Regulations have a role to play here in Europe.
Exactly. Some stuff we don't do unless we really push to it. Same with security for some companies. So your philosophy is that execution is what separates dreams from real companies.
Yeah.
You have reorganized teams into floor line units, self-organizing business units, recruitment pipelines that hired only top 5 people out of many applicants, agile account structures that outperform identical teams by multiple times. How do you think team topology amplify or reduce the cost of early technical decisions?
I think that designing from day one your team to deliver fast, to be efficient and deliver fast, make sure there's clear roles, clear expectations, clear communication, and simple communication is not only makes you deliver faster, it is the absolute success criteria for a good project. So it is about structure, and it is about making sure that you stop having in your delivery pipeline different silos that things need to hop across, because as soon as something has to hop across a silo, you can add 3 weeks. So the whole idea of having first a design team, then an implementation team, then a test team, then a DevOps team should come before. But anyway, having these split in separate teams that throws tickets to each other, have a front end team and a back end team as separate things makes sense in certain contexts, I'm sure, but in most contexts I've come across, it doesn't make any sense. Creating a team that is really cross-functional, that have all the skills and the power inside one team to take the problem from the clients on one end and spit out excellent code in the other end. They have gone through the QA, they have gone through DevOps, who've done a great platform. That's the key for speed and quality, I think, as well, actually. And I've reorganized a few companies that way, and until now, yeah, it creates other problems, but in general, this really speeds up things. It makes you deliver. The team understand what they need to deliver, because the whole team is part of understanding what comes in one end, which is market/client needs, and what is being delivered in the other end.
I see, the swing again. A few years ago we were in DevOps, at least, in the niche. I'm a bit more, platform DevOps. We were on the DevOps and distributed DevOps, and right now everyone is going toward platform and centralized platform, and see it as the best use case in all the cases, which I kind of disagree with. In some cases it might make sense, but it doesn't, it's not good always. And exactly, you need to then, you compromise the speed, for example, then, because you need to communicate between.
Exactly. And if you have a platform team that is really turned on, who see themselves as a powerful service to the rest of the teams, with clear APIs, clear processes, very close to the team, answers quickly, etc., platform teams can work. And if you follow the concept from team topology, that this is one of the kind of teams that you can have, but they're also very clear about it, that the interfaces, the team itself needs to have a certain mindset, and they need to take a certain ownership about the platform and see their roles as making this platform even better, even simpler to use for the rest of the company who use the platform to build their applications. So I'm sure we have a platform team in the current company. It's working pretty well. I have the people there with this kind of attitude who see themselves as a service. We further that by not only saying they're doing the platform, but we actually embed these people into each team as well. So that the team that uses our underlying platform to build things actually have one in the team who's part of the platform team. Because then you're not raising a Jira ticket and throw it over the fence and running away as quickly as you can. You have the person just next to you in the daily who needs to help you fix this problem in the platform, or explain to you how it actually works, or go in and fine tune something. Yeah. So I think, again, if you want fast flow, then having everybody in one room is quicker. Is it more efficient? Yes, I think it goes a lot faster. You can have a little bit of waste, but it goes a lot faster.
Yeah, definitely. When people talk to each other directly, and you have more knowledge and ownership more straightforward versus, I worked in platform DevOps space for last decade almost, and you'll see people, throwing away between each other like hot potato responsibility. Yeah, it's not mine, it's the teams. No, it's the platforms. No, it's the teams, and
Exactly.
it never
And the
ends.
teams have different priorities. For one, it's really important to get this out quickly. They have a lot of pressure from management. For the other team, the ticket they need to do as part of this workflow is just peanuts. It's nothing important. They have other priorities. So you have all these priority issues across teams. It makes it not work. A simple thing I found to do in each team is to make something called a team charter, where I basically sit down when we start the team and we talk and we clarify what do we expect of each other. What do I expect of the team? What does the team expect of me? What does the team expect of each other? What does the front end do? What does the QA do, etc., etc. And the purpose here is less to have a big document afterward. We document it, but is less to have that big document afterward. It's more to have the discussion, because the things that I've seen cause conflict in teams and cause team to slow down is typically if it's unclear expectations. I expect QA to do certain things, but QA expect me to do it. The engineer expect DevOps to do certain things, but DevOps expect the engineer to do it. So these kind of things where you miss who is actually responsible for what, and therefore sitting down, spending 2 or 3 hours with the team and say, so let's go through each role. Let's talk about what the role themselves, what they think their responsibility is. Let's talk about what everybody else expects from that role. What do you expect from a QA? Let's put this on paper. Let's discuss it, clarify the issues, agree, and move on. And that I've found solves so many problems internally teams and speed the teams up almost immediately. 2 hours invested, you save them the week after.
Yeah, usually people put it, we know, we don't need to talk about obvious stuff. And
No, you don't. I've yet to meet a team where when they sat down and talk about their role, there was nobody said, "But you think that's your responsibility?" I think you're missing this one. It always comes. There's always something.
exactly. And then you have stuff which, kind of fall in between, and you'll find out a few years later, I've been on the projects like this, that, no one, this person thought it's others' responsibility, this team thought it's our responsibility, and no one looked at it in years. And then until
Exactly.
it blows up in production level, and it's very expensive. So yeah.
And you have conflicts inside the team, and you have, the most conflicts come from expectations that have not been met. Most typically expectations that was never announced or never talked about, and suddenly, but people expect them still, but the other person just didn't know the expectation. So setting expectations right about what everybody needs to do, and what others expect from them is worth gold. In general, communication, and that also then goes high in the hierarchy. Clear goals, clear why we're doing this. What is the value we're generating here? Not for the company, but especially the value for the end client. Why is this really important for whoever we are working for? That the company can earn money, etc. That's all great, but typically engineering teams, they're proud of what they're building. They want to build something that they see being used. So if you as a manager can communicate, these guys, the client really need this feature because it is blocking, that will motivate the whole team and create clarity in why this is being done the way it's being done.
I think that's a typical difference, for example, between consultants and typical tech people very often. That you have more business focus in the and understanding. Okay, how to communicate. Okay, business wants the newest feature and so on, and that's what. And tech people usually just care about tech, and you need to also make them talk to each other.
Yeah.
And also you need to talk to business that like, hey, maintaining certain stuff or automating certain stuff in the long run gonna bring you a lot of, or focusing on security gonna bring you much more benefits besides only having the newest shiniest features, because without good underlying layers, it's gonna fail in some point. You're gonna have the issues if you don't take care of it.
Absolutely. I was 100% techie for a long time, talking techie for every problem. And then for some reason, by some point, I discovered I don't understand the business side. I don't understand the sales side. I don't understand what they're doing. So I actually went into sales and became sales for 1.5 years. simply to understand that side of the business. And it has helped me in my career as a techie so much later. Especially any sort of leadership or management role, you need to understand the commercial side and the business side of things. It is not enough. As a CTO, your job is not to do much techie anymore. Your job is to translate business needs into cost-efficient techie things, and transport what the business actually want. That's what you do.
Yeah, and communicate to business about that part also.
Exactly, both directions. So translating the business needs and what the techies things are weird decisions from the business, which actually makes sense business wise. Translate that into tech talk and what we need to do and why we need to do it like this. And the other direction, put the constraints and the feasibility and the things we cannot do from the techie side back to the business and say, it needs to work this and this. We can do this. We can't do this, like that. So be the translator in both directions. Indeed,
exactly.
It's a cool job. I can only recommend all techies to go that direction.
I know some cases who don't want to go up and deal with business. They find it quite tiring. So I think it's very developing, but it's not for everyone.
Yeah, I fully agree. And just to put things straight, I don't think that everybody needs to do it, and I don't think the only way forward in your career is to go to the business side. It is just eye-opening as a techie to be there. But there are excellent tech people who do tech their whole life, and they are amazing. Love to work with them. Great people.
Exactly, we need both. So that's the place for everyone.
Yeah.
One of the few CTOs you are one of the few CTOs who deployed agentic AI across business processes. Do you think companies today are creating a new kind of lock-in by not designing their systems to be AI augmented and still stay in the old ways?
Yeah, I think actually the funny thing is that big classical companies are actually in a better position to deploy agentic AI than small businesses and startups, simply because they typically have all the processes hammered out with the interfaces, with the formats, with the decision points, with defined inputs and outputs, and etc. So in principle, it should be possible to take a big classical company with the ISO 9001 certification and all the process defined, and make that agentic. They of course then have the problem that typically they're very, very slow in adopting new technologies like this, and there will be a lot of guardrails and constraints from legal departments, etc. So they don't do it. What I found difficult in smaller companies of agentic AI was that the process was not well defined. That means the first question is, what is the process in the first place? And that means you actually, as you go, define the process that you want to automate, want the agents to solve for you. And that's before you even start talking about the actual quality of the generated output. Because that's the second problem we ran into, at least, is that you can generate a lot of stuff very quickly, but when you rerun the same agents, even when you've done a lot of effort to configure them and give guardrails and constraints and configuring the LLM, still the results you get out is not always consistent. And as a business, for some processes, if I run them 3 times, I expect to get the same answer 3 times. Maybe not exactly the same formulation, but the same answer. And when we run in some processes, agentic AIs, we got very different answers every time. So a lot of effort. It looks like you can easily do it, just deploy it, it's all running. The devil's in the detail. And actually, when you start testing it, it takes a long time. But exciting stuff. You can do a lot with it. We're using agentic AI for some things, recruitment, etc., but also using a lot of AI tools in other areas of the business.
Exactly. I think, as you say, you need to have defined stuff, and there is big issue with having, confidence, how high confidence you have that you have the, return, which you want or which you expect to have, as we are basing everything based on the data and probability and how good your data is and how much confidence you can have in your data on which you're training.
And you need to validate the output again and again, because I say it is not an it. but the AI gets it wrong fairly frequently, even with good definitions.
Yeah,
So
and do you have a human in the loop, or how do you?
That is exactly our AI policy. Is there's always a human in the loop. So for anything from coding, the modern coding tools with AI is extremely powerful for code generation. Can solve very complex problems, but there must always be not only the person generating, but a second person in the loop before anything goes into production, to make sure that this is really maintainable, understandable, and there's no security holes in it, or any weird things we don't understand.
Yeah, so when you automate the process, you need to have a process also to handle it and verify that
Indeed.
everything is automated in
Indeed.
one way by agentic AI.
Indeed. So it comes with a lot of extras that you maybe not think about as just when you start. When you start thinking about it, it all sort of falls into place with a lot of work. But AI has come to stay. There's a lot of talk about the AI bubble and will it burst, etc. I think some people misunderstand what that means. For sure, it's overvaluated. For sure, it will be hard to get a return on that money. But AI has come to stay in everything we do, from your Excel spreadsheet to your documents to your code to this video call. We will have AI everywhere.
Yeah, it already is pretty much everywhere, but not
Yeah.
everyone is on the same level of the adoption it yet. But people
And I
need
do
to
wonder,
learn to live with it.
and I do wonder what's going to happen there. Is interesting. Will there be a split of people and nations into those who adopt quickly and those who don't, and some will fall behind? Will companies do the same? Will there be companies who move extremely quickly because of AI and maybe fail? And people or companies who work very slowly? I find it very hard to predict right now. Do you have a view there?
Not yet. I see it going in a different directions. For example, I'm originally Polish, and Poland has much lower adoption of the AI versus Denmark. When I can see, government projects in Denmark push for it, a lot of funding, people, teaching people, and there is a lot of push to being able to adopt AI in the various industries and various organizations. Or, for example, my partner works in the construction site field, and their adoption of even automation is very low, not even talking about AI, and AI it's even lower. And I can see, that's also from one side is opportunity for people who, as us who work with it, and that's, have business case with it by going to the industries, for example, or the countries where the absorption is lower and leveraging it to the business case. But the question, okay, what is going to happen if they don't decide to go with it?
Yeah.
Very fast, you can be on a very different levels. And also,
Exactly.
but if you also adopt AI in the wrong way, that also can backfire to you. So
Absolutely. I find it hard. It's a hard. On one hand, the advice is, I think the main advice is everybody should look into AI and
yeah.
at least have it on the radar as something to use, or a potential use. Then take a conscious decision where it makes sense and where it does not make sense, because it does not make sense everywhere.
Yeah, no, not everywhere, but I think you need to learn to be, to use it. My parents work in insurance for 30 something years, and I'm like, hey, you need to learn it, and you need to learn to use it in the secure way, because if you don't know how to use it in the secure way, it can backfire to you.
Yeah.
So.
And people will not be replaced by AI, but they will be replaced by other people who know how to use AI. So
Exactly.
and the things that AI automates is the jobs that we're used to thinking about as secure jobs, the middle to top tier, the banking, the insurance, the doctors, all these jobs can be heavily supported, if not automated, with AI. And that's a real shift in our whole society. I think that is coming, and I look forward to experience where we're gonna go.
Yeah, these and also all the repetitive jobs, which all the call center support, I recently had issue, I had to get document from my bank. I talked to AI. AI sent me document as well, exactly what I needed without talking to the human at all. It's only get escalated to humans in case something.
Support cases, when I raise support cases on tech tools, I get emails back with the right answer, right support answer, and with an auto generated on top, so I can see is an AI generated. So that, yes, it's happening all over the place.
You built SCOS 2000 releases that still operate in European satellites today. Space is pretty much, as we talked in the beginning, environment where decisions last decades. What did working in space teach you about making choices, that need to survive 30 plus years or even longer in some cases?
It learned me where the real cost of software development are, because we often think it's about architecture and writing the code, but it's not. It's the maintenance. So all investigations show that 80 to 85% of the total lifetime cost of software is in the maintenance, in making sure that software keeps running. Of course, that depends on how long software is intended to run, but that's where you're going to spend the money. So saving a few bucks in the implementation or in the architecture to go quicker, but sacrificing your maintainability of your code is a killer long term. You slow down, and and I think most people who work in teams have had this experience. You start a project, greenfield, and everything is going very rapidly. Everything is fantastic. You're moving, things are happening. You have the feeling that every sprint you're really moving quickly, and slowly you get into things start to take time, and that is that whole backlog you have of to some extent technical debt, but also unmaintainable code or lack of automations in your testing and these kind of things that catch up with you over time. And working on a project that takes, well, they're still flying after 25, 26 years, for sure. The maintenance is the massive part. So back to your question, what I learned is to be very quality aware upfront. That said, you need to also going fast. You need to decide when to be quality aware and when not. If we're doing quick demos and we need to go quickly, then accept the technical debt. Just be aware of it. Go back, fix it later. But if it's something we know we're gonna keep maintaining, then it has to be good and smooth and automated in testing. Really good automation testing.
Yeah, and having automated as much as possible, that's also one of the costs.
Exactly.
And, I had many people, right now with the tool set which you have, like Lovable and other, a lot of people are like, oh, I can do it myself. But I mean, and when they come, oh, can you make it better? I'm like, yeah, I can, but the cost isn't of me building it. The cost is of later maintaining it. So if you don't have budget on it and you don't want to spend, just go and buy SaaS and they do it for you. It's much better sometimes the use case, especially in the smaller companies versus, building and having whole people and hands-on and knowledge. And you need to cover a lot of different angles to it. So.
The second thing I learned is documentation. You hate doing it all the time, but hey, long term, you need it. You don't have to write up front, right afterward. Then you know exactly what needs to document. But still, documentation is bloody important. What else I learned is this design for extendability. Think from day one about this system need to evolve. So try to avoid big, monolithic, tightly coupled systems or solutions. Make things asynchronous wherever possible. Simple microservice thinking, isolated, minimum dependency on other things. Prefer duplication even to dependencies on other things, simply because it makes it so much simpler later to change something or to fix something.
Yeah, and in some cases also centralize some stuff. Don't have the same code in 50 places. And when you have the incident, you need to update, fix in 50 places when you could have in one. And just automatic rollout to all 50 others, yeah.
In Scott 1000, we had I think it was 2.5 million lines of code in the end. At some point, I did a search for how many ways we had to open files, and I think I found 17 different ways of opening files, with different classes doing more or less the same: opening a file, passing it, closing it again. In the good old days where you used to do this by hand. Exactly. So have well documented, clear reuse libraries that everybody knows about. But there is a saturation in lines of code at some point. People can't understand that bigger system, and it becomes easier for people sometimes to just create a new one, and then you start escalating, building new stuff because people don't understand what's already there.
Yeah, that's one thing. I think that's where the AI come into use and, leveraging it, in understanding the code which already exists. And also what I find out the first time I've seen any colleagues wanting to update the documentation just because we introduced AI agent, in one of the projects who were scanning through all the documentation. And instead of talking to many people about where is it in the documentation or, leveraging knowledge from their head, they're like, hey, talk to this agent or talk to this LLM. And that's what is trained on the internal documentation. Suddenly, all the documentation is updated. I've never seen something like this before AI, to be honest, but that's a very good side effect of it.
Yeah, and AI discovers things you didn't know you had. I've seen it a few times where AI suggested something which use code in certain ways or even documentation, and I was like, this is not true. And then when you go check, yes, it's actually true. You didn't know that down there somewhere there was this library doing this through this API, but the AI, it doesn't know everything, but it sure as hell found it. And you can actually learn about your own systems through AI. Yeah,
that's one thing, or you can also find very easy way that you have some stuff are outdated, for example, in the documentation or in your code, compared to doing
that's one of the main things that we're working on with AI. We have made a conscious decision to not build AI, even though we're using AI massively to build our platforms. We're not building in applications to actually use AI, because we're saying that should be done by people who know much more about AI than we do in the space domain. But AI tools for our developers to go faster and for our partners to build faster on our platform, that's real value. That's where we want to look at as well.
Then that's got us to round of lightning questions, and then I have one last closing question, and we're done. So I have 5 questions for the fast question. For the fast answer. If you can answer in one or few words, whatever you think. Legacy migration or greenfield build?
Greenfield, much more fun.
Event-driven or workflow orchestrated architecture?
Event-driven, every time.
Hire the 10 times generalist or the deep specialist?
The generalist.
Better to rewrite early or optimize late?
Optimize late.
One phrase every CTO should delete from their one-to-ones?
I think that.
Great. That's the end of firing round. And I have one more thing. If you could force every startup CTO to make only one good architectural decision in the first 90 days, the decision that avoids the biggest lock-in later, what would the decision be?
Wow, it's a tough one. What would it be? The first decision would be to go to the cloud, for sure, but do it with cloud agnostic. So do it with Kubernetes, Terraform, Helm files, etc. Because at some point you will most likely, especially if you work in critical infrastructure like we do, be asked to move. And that means that decision can save you a lot of money in the long run. It might look more complicated from day one, but it's going to save you money long term. Unless you know that you want to stay on that platform forever and that a big hyperscaler or a specific cloud is exactly the solution you will need forever, then go to that cloud. But else, make it agnostic.
Exactly. And also it will save you a lot of time if you need to move. I had a case recently when they wanted to move from one cloud to the other. They estimated 4 years to move.
Exactly. We have recently started migrating, or we're actually almost done now. We were fully AWS native integrated. I love AWS, fantastic cloud, let's make that straight, is really, really, really good. Fantastic services, great support, amazing account team supporting us. But our clients in Europe who are flying missions with very sensitive data, they don't want non-European clouds anymore. Even the AWS clouds in Frankfurt is not good enough, for example. It's because headquarters is still in the US. And that means we had to migrate our complete system to agnostic solution. And that is a massive undertaking when you do that later. So design that into the system from day one, or at least have it on the radar and make it easy, because you will most likely need it at some point.
Or at least use part of the cloud which you know you can easily replace with something what is more cloud agnostic.
Exactly. That kind of trade-offs where you say this here we need to encapsulate, here we need to deploy ourselves and not use the native service. Cognito is a good example. Is in AWS is extremely central. Depending on that, it's painful when you need to move, and other services as well. But whereas an object store, every single cloud has an object store today, and there's 3 similar object store. So not a problem. It's easy. But there are other things that are not so easy. Encapsulate them, make them agnostic. I bet it's going to save you long term.
Yeah, definitely. There are some stuff which you can find in each cloud, and it's easy you replace from logging, some dashboards, secrets manager, and so on, and some which are very specific to cloud, and you have much harder way to later on find it if you don't think about it early on.
Yeah, I did.
That's all I had. Thank you a lot for the conversation. Learned a lot in the short time.
Likewise, been a pleasure. Have a great evening.
Thank you. That's it for today's edition of the Bits and Bolts with Paulina. Did you like what you heard? Of course you do. Tell your friends.